Welcome to Numbers Don't Lie, Marketing Insights for Accountants. I'm Brad Pinzer.
And I'm Janelle Sikora. Welcome. It's been a few weeks with the holidays and everything else, Brad. I'm kind of happy to be back at it.
Me too. I mean, you set out to do these podcasts and, have all these great intentions, and then things happen and get in your way.
Business happens.
Yeah. And holidays and stuff like that. But yeah, it's nice to be back.
Well, one thing that's really exciting is, I'll tell the audience a story. We're talking about a book today, and it is a game changer. And it's a book that I found out about at the end of the year. I read it. I have never, ever, ever bought a book in all of its formats until this one. I downloaded it on Audible. I put it on Kindle, and I had to have the hard copy, which I already have sticky notes in, and it's already highlighted. And then I kept telling you got to read this, you got to read this, it's a game changer, it's awesome. And then you read it, and all of a sudden it's like you're excited about it too. So do you want to tell them what book we're talking about today?
Sure. It's The 4 Conversations by Blair Enns. Mm-hmm. And I also super excited about it. But before I get into that, I wonder, is there a word for that where like you buy every format?
I don't know.
Yeah. I'm just the digital guy. I like that, like the Kindle, have it on my phone where I can, read it from everywhere and stuff like that. The book, it's really, when you read a book and it just comes at the right time, wherever stage you're at, like with your business and stuff like that, or your personal life, that's what this book was for me.
Yeah.
It's really empowering because, it's really about, when you're in this business of selling your expertise, whether you're an accountant or you sell marketing services or you're an attorney, whatever it is, there's conversations that you have to have. And it's really about, positioning yourself as this expert versus, just a regular old vendor. I mean, that's kind of like the gist and the main point. One of the main points.
It is. And I think the reason I think it's so apropos for accountants and CPA firm owners is because the shift in the transformation in the profession from compliance to advisory now forces you to have some sort of sales soft skill, right? That's terrifying for most accountants. They don't want to be seen as salesy or pushy, and they shy away from that. And therefore, because there are 52,000 CPA firms and 88,000 accounting services firms in total, how they have to be able to differentiate themselves. So especially if they're selling advisory services, there's so many of them out there. You have to be able to differentiate yourself. And what it comes down to is it's just a conversation. And we've said that before, but Blair Enns does a masterful job at explaining the 4 different types of conversations you have. You should never approach as an expert, right? And accountants, CPAs are experts in the language of business and in tax and audit for those that do audit. As an expert, you should never feel like you are pushing your services on anyone. Rather, it starts with that probative conversation. But what I think is so interesting too about the timing of this book is that there's been a lot written on the shift from an attention economy to a trust economy. And Blair Enns does a really good job of talking about in this book that initial conversation, that probative conversation, should be had for you in public before a prospect ever gets to you. It should be through, you've educated them on some sort of a platform, or they've read your content, they've read your thought leadership. Once a client gets to you who's already seen you speak or read something you've written or watched a video, or seen you on social media, something like that, if by the time they get to you, you're already the expert in their eyes if you've shared and educated them on your expertise. Mm-hmm. And that's super important. That shifts the perspective of you being just another accountant to, oh my gosh, this person's an expert. They really know a lot about the construction industry, or they're really well versed on the food service industry. They know this industry.
So what would you say? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's that first conversation is really about establishing yourself as an expert in the conversation, but what you're saying though is before they even come to that conversation, you should already in their mind be that expert. And then whatever the client or prospect says to you in that conversation, you always have to think about it from that expert standpoint, so you can kind of be proactive, but also reactive to whatever they're saying in a way that continually always puts you in that position of being an expert. But let me ask you a question about that though. Like, so let's just say, like what you're saying is they should already know that you're this expert, right? So like, what should an accounting firm be doing to establish themselves as an expert so that that happens before they even have that conversation?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked. There, several things. So think about it this way. Let's just say I run a construction company and I'm in an association and there's a meeting and I'm talking to somebody and I'm frustrated with my accountant. And then maybe this other person's like, oh, you know what? I love our CPA firm or our accountant. We've been working with them for years. You need to go there. What's the first thing that's going to happen? That person that was referred is going to go to the website. They're going to check them out. Probably going to stumble into their Google business profile. They're going to look at their reviews and they're going to see what other people are saying. And then on the website, they're going to maybe download a free piece of content. So you asked, what should they be doing? They should have a really good website. They should have free content on their website that can be downloaded so that they can capture those leads. They should have an entire content strategy in place that allows them to climb the ladder up to that top rung, which is educating. And you have to have a content strategy in place for that. And so that's what they should be doing. They should be really focused on, what is my content strategy? Am I blogging? Am I doing webinars? Am I doing any video? Video is like absolutely critical for 2025. It is the easiest way for an accountant to differentiate yourself because very few accountants like getting behind a video camera. But they should be doing video, creating content, and then putting that out there on a regular basis, even doing webinars, even being guests on podcasts.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely, I mean, all of those things. And I think we talked about this before. I just want to, just kind of remind everyone that's listening is that, that video is important because it's really allows people to really understand, your passion and who you are as a person and all that kind of stuff. Because there's a whole other level to this besides your expertise. It's like, somebody you want to do business with, somebody that you want to work with. There's that kind of stuff. And that's what video and podcasts allow you to do so that, hopefully people watch you and follow you and listen to you and they get to know you so that when you do eventually, connect with them, they already know you, and they know you as this expert. And a lot of times people could follow you for, a long period of time, it could be 2 years, and they follow you and they finally bite the bullet and they know you because they've been following you for that long. Awesome. You might not know them, but they know you. And, that's critical. And those two specific things, the video and the podcast is really, the medium that allows you to, communicate that way.
Well, and I think another important thing and an easy thing for accountants to do, especially those that are like, I'm not feeling it on the video, is you've got to have a good nurture sequence in place. You've got to be emailing your prospects with high value content, nothing spammy. Just you want them to hear the good nuggets from you, because if you heard about the fact that the BOI reporting requirement was reversed from another accountant and yours hadn't even told you that yet, that accountant then just gets elevated, the one that you heard about it from. So if you can be sending out regular tips and insights twice a month and high value content, that's just one more angle, right? You've got email, you've got social media, you've got downloadable content for your website, you've got LinkedIn, you've got your blog, you've got video if you feel comfortable with it, podcasting if you feel comfortable with it. But there's so many different options to be able to educate out there. But I want to talk about this lead generation ladder for a minute, because I'm going to tell you why it was such an aha moment for me. So the lead generation ladder inside this book there's 3 rungs on the ladder. And the first rung, the lowest rung, is sales. And sales are the types of activities where you can have an immediate impact, get business. It's a lot of cold outreach. It's trade show floors, those types of things. We all know what sales is. The next rung on the ladder is marketing. And typically this involves some sort of paid engagement, and it could be advertising like pay-per-click. It could be any sort of advertising, maybe some email strategy in there. But marketing is going to drive leads to you. It's just not going to be as immediate as those lower rung sales activities. Problem with those two things are that, especially on the sales rung, that it caters more to an attention economy. Whereas the higher up on that ladder you go in lead generation, so you go from marketing then to educating, which is the top rung, people trust, the trust level is at the highest, even though the immediacy is at its lowest on the education level. But what I always try and tell our clients is, back to the question you asked, what should I be doing? You should be focused on that educating rung of the ladder now, because it does not happen overnight. You cannot get there overnight. You can't build that overnight. You can't build your public persona of expertise overnight. But if you start now, 12 months from now, you're going to start seeing things change, and you're going to start seeing the quality of your leads get better. And that's what you want. You want quality over quantity. And it's the best way to build a predictive growth in a business.
Right. And that's also how you differentiate yourself.
Yeah. And so for some accountants who are like, oh my God, Janel, Brad, how the heck do I do all this? Well, this is why the lead generation ladder was such a big aha moment for me, because you don't have to do all of it. You can automate the 2 bottom rungs. You can completely automate the sales rung and the marketing rung, especially through, Kajabra. I'll put a shameless plug in there. The show is sponsored by Kajabra, right? But through our Kajabra CRM and our, capture, nurture, propose, close, onboard program, it's all done for you. All that bottom rung and that middle rung of marketing, completely done for you. All you have to do is focus on that top rung of educating, which also, we help with, and we can, automate that partially.
And the foundational pieces, we have this marketing playbook that we put together that really kind of positions your firm based on, your areas of specialty, your niche, and all that kind of stuff. And then once you have this kind of core messaging, then all the other stuff, it's easy to automate and plug in with all the tools that are available. And it's getting easier and easier and easier. So you can do all like the low level automate that. And it can be overwhelming. I know this. It's even overwhelming to us. And, we know what we're doing. We've been doing this for a long time.
Right.
But if it's not your thing, I can understand how overwhelming it is. So there is kind of a process and a framework and a way to go about this to handle all that low hanging kind of like fruit there. And then you can focus on, the stuff that's really going to differentiate yourself that, you can't really automate, is really, putting out that message, that authentic message of, you personally being in front of the camera and talking about, demonstrating your expertise and having these conversations and doing things like that.
Yeah, it's critical. And I think, as you're building your education platform, you also want to make sure that you're capturing these leads that come in through, whether they come in through missed calls, or whether they come in through a web chat, or whether they come in because they downloaded something or you went to a networking meeting. But you want to capture these. And that's an opportunity for you to be like dripping on them, not through just a boring old email campaign, but something that people really enjoy reading, opening, they find value in. So, I know that there are so many accountants who are like, I don't feel comfortable behind video. Totally get that. But at the bare minimum, you can be educating your prospective clients through written content that's really easy to create. And it could be social media, blogs, as well as ebooks, those types of things. So, and emails, like nurture to twice a month, sending out an email to your entire list. Because like you said, sometimes people will follow people for a few years before they finally decide to pull the trigger and pick up the phone and have a conversation. And if you're not the one that's in front of them when they're ready, your competitor will be. It's just, it's that simple.
Right. So, so let's talk, should we talk about the next conversation?
Sure.
Yeah. And also the thing about these conversations that's really important, like there's these 4 conversations, and each conversation, the goal is always to maintain your level of expertise, always that position of being the expert. So as you go through these conversations, that's like a critical part of this book. And these conversations aren't necessarily like, you have one conversation, you have the next conversation. Sometimes they're blended together. Mm-hmm. And it really sometimes depends on, there's a lot of factors. It depends on, the prospect and things like that and where they're at and all that kind of stuff. But, the second conversation is really, digging into the value of your
No, it's qualifying.
Oh, it's the qualifying.
Value is third. Yeah.
Okay. My bad. Okay.
That's all right.
I'm still learning.
Well, and one thing, a premise behind all these conversations too, that's really, really interesting, I thought, is that Blair Enns said, it's always a balance of power, right? Who has the power in a conversation? Either you as the expert or the prospective client. And he brings up a really good point because the prospective client has all the power if they believe that there are lots of different alternatives to you. Right? So an example of that, you can go get your tax return done anywhere, right? Anywhere. So the client has all the power. But if you're an expert accountant and you're like, listen, I work in the construction industry. I was born and raised in the construction industry. And you've got a story to tell about why that is your niche, and you can show them how you understand their business better than any other general accountant out there who doesn't have a specialty. Then the balance of power shifts, and now you're unique and you have the power, and they see you as an expert instead of a vendor, and they're going to pay an expert. A vendor's an expense, an expert is an investment.
Absolutely. And the book is so amazing because it really goes into details of like specific situations and like how you would handle that situation. And it really, kind of like gives you an epiphany of like, oh, that's how you do it, like, because you hear about these things and like just different like kind of like strategies on how to have these conversations, but like they really do a good job of kind of explaining it so that it really sinks in. I felt that way.
Yeah, you're right. And I think one of my favorite examples was when he was talking about the was it the qualifying conversation? No, value conversation. And I think that conversation, that and the probative conversation, I think would be really, really valuable for accountants, because he walks through an example of pricing and how to establish pricing in a custom high ticket engagement. And I thought that was absolutely fascinating, the examples that he gave. And I am in 100% agreement. He is talking about always having 3 packages so that you're emotionally detached. You're still making the same percentage, profit margin from each package, but you've got a good, better, best. And it shouldn't matter to you what the client chooses. It's your job to present them to the client very objectively and say, okay, based on our conversation, there's this package down here and there's this package way up here. And this is the premium, what I completely recommend. But then that anchored package in the middle is where most people land and where you want them to land. So that was very interesting to me, his conversation about pricing.
Yeah, I like that, the pricing, and I have, I've read some of his other books on pricing, so I was familiar with some of that, but there was a whole bunch of new stuff that I learned there. Really like the value one on how to learn about the value. Like it's not easy, to do. Right. So like when I was reading about it, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like, it's like you have that kind of feeling when you go through it. And I really liked the first conversation, because it's really important to go in there and that mantra, like, I am the expert, like, I'm here to help.
Yeah.
I am the expert. Like, having
I'm the
that
prize.
mindset,
Yeah.
I am the prize, that whole thing, is really helpful. And it helped us, like, just very recently with, when you have somebody that comes to you and, this is our price, this is what it costs. And like, can you do it for less and this and that? And they kind of start saying things and acting in a way where, they're not really treating you as an expert,
Right.
and more like the vendor. And what this does is it helps you recognize that.
Yeah.
And it helps you adjust to that, to either put yourself back into that expert position, or in this case, it let me realize that, hey, as much as I like what they're doing, because their business was fascinating to me, and I really wanted to work with them and help them,
Yeah.
and you have to fight like these temptations sometimes, because they're not, if they're not going to hire you for your expertise, then, even if you accept doing the work with them, you forever, that relationship is always going to be like, kind of like messed up. It's going to be like the vendor kind of thing and not the expertise. And so you have to learn how to say, listen, I recommend that you kind of go this other route for now. And when you're ready to leverage my expertise, let's pick up that conversation, so you can keep it really positive. And that, that right there really helps you just mentally and psychologically, like for yourself on a personal level. And it gives you the confidence to have these conversations. Cause I've been in sales just because I have to be, but I've never like really, I'm more from like the tech side, right? So like I'm learning how to do that. And I think a lot of accountants also, like they're accountants, they do accounting work and they have to also sell at the same time. So very similar, I think, in that respect. And so it's very helpful.
I do want to point one other thing out though, like a big takeaway for accountants. So one of the things that Blair talks about in this book is that you have to maintain the position of expert throughout all conversations, throughout your entire relationship with the client.
Critical.
I think that where that could be a challenge for a lot of accountants and CPAs is they might perceive that as, well, I've got to do all the technical speak. I think it's still really important to balance talking like a real person and talking to like, you're talking to someone who's in 8th grade or 5th grade or whatever. That's super important for you to be able, I think that even enhances your expertise when you have the ability to translate very complex technical language into examples and analogies and language that all business owners can understand.
Absolutely. I mean, being able to do that, I think that just demonstrates your expertise. And also, as I mentioned earlier, like having a framework for delivering, what it is that you do and your processes, and being able to explain that, all of the above. I had a point I wanted to mention, but I can't remember.
That's all right. Well, we'll wrap it up. I think the biggest takeaway is, it's the best book I've read this year. Granted, it's January 13th. Excuse me. But it is awesome. It is a must read. It's actually the best book I've read in a very long time. I enjoyed Blair's first one too, the Win Without Pitching Manifesto. But this, I think, applies to every CPA firm and CPA firm owner who is trying to embrace that selling advisory and monthly services mentality. So if you've gone through Practice Forward, if you've gone through any other, coaching type engagements to really transition your firm, this is a must read. It's worth it.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I highly recommend it.
Well, then we'll be back next week. Thank you for tuning in, and be well.
Take care.